Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar Dee8. I am your tsundere streamer who doesn't stream. What did he say? He's saying your group probably doesn't want it reported because you fear that Japan will steal it away from you. Lieutenant Angelo was actually more afraid of Italy itself finding out. To us, our homeland's current government is a mere puppet set up by the Allied forces. If they find out, the gold will be returned to them. However, that would be the same as handing over the gold over to our enemies. They'd come all this way to make sure that the gold didn't fall into enemy hands. They needed to hide it from the puppet government until their homeland could be truly restored. Ushiromiya, make a proposal to the Italians. Tell them that we wish to offer our assistance. What sort of assistance? Let's see if I've got this straight. They want that gold kept secret so their homeland doesn't find out about it. But they'll need to find at least a transport ship if they plan to carry it off this island. If they try that, though, the mainland will hear about it, which means the Italian government will too. That's right. In other words, there's no longer any way to take the gold off Rokkenjima. Their mission must have been to hide the gold in absolute secrecy until the day of their homeland's restoration. Later on, several plausible rumors would circulate about how Nazi Germany also moved much of its secret wealth to certain hidden areas in South America just prior to its collapse. It was a very natural conclusion to reach. That submarine was their only method of transporting the gold in secrecy, and it's become completely useless. They can't fully stop the water from seeping in, and it'll probably sink completely before much longer. There is no longer any way for them to transport the gold in secrecy. In other words, their mission has ended in failure here in the Far East. So, just how is Lieutenant Yamamoto proposing that we assist them? The Rokkenjima base is top secret, and no one knows about it. The islanders in the surrounding area think this island's ill-omened and deserted, so they'll never come near it. Catch my drift, Ushiromiya? What did he say? As we told you earlier, no one knows about this base, and as you can see, it's of no use strategically, so the higher-ups have already forgotten about it. It sounds like Lieutenant Yamamoto is suggesting that you hide the gold on this island. Beatrice quickly translated this and told Lieutenant Angelo. He began discussing something rapidly with his subordinates. They didn't look happy. What, you don't want to live on the island? Japan may have been their ally, but they probably didn't want to leave the gold for reconstructing their motherland in Asian hands. Still, it was hard to imagine any other option for them. It's a fierce debate. Some say that there's no other option, while others think we should remain loyal to our homeland no matter the cost. Lieutenant Angelo is stuck between a rock and a hard place. The final order given to them by their fallen homeland was to hide the gold. However, by now, there was no way for that order to be carried out successfully. If the mainland or their own homeland found out, the gold would probably be confiscated by the wrong people from their point of view. If they really wanted to carry out the homeland's orders faithfully, Lieutenant Yamamoto's proposal was extremely reasonable. Though he couldn't understand their words, he seemed to realize how divided they were. If we help out, we'll be able to hide the gold in total secrecy. Fortunately, there's an abandoned tunnel that stretches all the way across the island. He's saying that if you hide the gold underground and bury it on this island, no one will be able to find it. Our side is saying that it sounds like a realistic proposal. However, there seems to be some resistance to accepting Japanese help. It seems they're having difficulty coming to a decision. Do you really have a choice, Italians? You don't think you can hide that gold without our help, do you? And I doubt you want to leave it lying around on the beach for much longer. Lieutenant Angelo wants to minimize the number of people who know about the gold. He doesn't trust the Japanese, but it looks like he's decided Lieutenant Yamamoto's plan is the best possible option. But he seems suspicious. About what? He's wondering whether they really intend to move a full 10 tons of gold and swear themselves to secrecy. Without any sort of compensation. 50%. Sir, you can't be. I mean, I fully expect, like, it would be unreasonable for them not to want some compensation. Like, let's be clear. You can't expect people to hide 10 tons of gold and not want any of it. But 50%, now that's just fucking greedy. Especially since divided out of how many people? Even if you're like splitting most of it to the military, I feel like that's a very unreasonable. It's almost highway robbery at that point. Hand over half the gold to us. With that as our work wages, we'll hide the other half nice and safe for them. Okay. It's perfectly reasonable to ask for a cut of the gold. But I feel like 10% should have been the highest you should have ever considered. Especially, are you reporting this to your superiors? Or are you just splitting this among like the 20 Japanese people that are here? He's telling you to give us half of it. The instant Beatrice translated that sentence, Lieutenant Angelo slammed his hands on the desk and stood up. Instead of flinching, Lieutenant Yamamoto, true to his boasts of once being a thug who everyone feared, actually looked even more relaxed and confident than he had previously. After all, they really don't have the option of refusing. Okay, both sides are soldiers. You really don't think people are just going to not start? I mean, you have people that are trained for combat. We could demand 80% if we wanted. Okay, dude. Again, I understand. It's perfectly reasonable to ask for a cut of the gold. There'd be no way I'd expect any group of people to be willing to hide the gold and not want some cut. But I feel like 10% should have been the absolute highest you could ever even ask for. 5%, maybe, if you're pushing it. But honestly, I would say maybe 1%. That's fair. 50%, that's highway. 80%, I feel like even just saying that in jest, they're going to fucking shoot you. I have lowered that to 50% as a sign of good faith. Of course, we aren't the only ones with leverage here. If the Italians decide to leak this to the outside, all of the gold will probably be taken by Japan or Italy. We won't get even a single yen out of it. This can only work if we're both partners in crime here. He's saying we should all be partners in the crime of embezzlement. That's not very moral at all. By now, he's already moved on to speaking as an individual, not as a soldier. I don't believe it. So, the gold has blinded him? Lieutenant Yamamoto was grinning. It really did look as though he had been blinded by greed, just as Beatrice said. If they leave it just piled up where it is, you can be sure that it'll be noticed when the boat comes for them from the mainland. If that happens, none of us will profit. They ought to accept our proposal and hide the gold as soon as possible. It sounds like Lieutenant Angelo is dead set on the Japanese and Italian governments not finding out about this. He wants to carry out his duty until the end. So, what exactly does that mean? He wants the gold buried deep within the island, even if he has to pay some percentage to buy your silence. Of course, some of his subordinates object strongly. They're saying that 50% is out of the question. I agree. 50% is ridiculous. You know, I mean, at this point, okay, you're setting 50% as your bargaining point. So let's bargain. I mean, heck, that is a common strategy to ask for more than what's reasonable. And so you ask for more than what you actually want, so you can bargain down to what you actually do want, or even more than what you thought was reasonable. But again, you have to have some amount of tact and leverage. Ushiromiya, how are they doing? They're going to kill you. They also don't want any more people laying eyes on the gold. However, they seem to object to the portions. Lieutenant Angelo says they'll consider 10%. Okay, fair. I think that is fair. Though he's also saying that he's fairly sure Lieutenant Yamamoto won't accept that. Again, we're trying to bargain. This is, we're haggling it out. Ushiromiya, what's the Italians' answer? They'll say they'll consider 10%. This time it was Lieutenant Yamamoto who slammed down on the desk, but the Italians didn't flinch either. Yes, either or either. An incredible tension filled the small room. However, despite his violent outburst a second ago, Lieutenant Yamamoto's expression still looked smug and in control. He's probably going to say 30%. He was probably confident that he now had the initiative. 10%? Now there's a modest proposal. Okay, I'll give up 10%. We'll split it 46. You fucking dick. That's just rude. Tell them I won't go any lower than that. Okay, that's not how bargaining works. You have to... It's like you're just completely shutting down the discussion. That's 40% for the Japanese, 60% for the Italians. The lieutenant was talking tough. But in truth, these negotiations weren't being made on equal footing. If the Italians had just wanted the gold for themselves, there wouldn't have been much of a problem. But what if? What if they were true patriots and decided to return the gold for the purpose of reconstruction, even to the defeated puppet government of their homeland? If so, they would probably report the existence of the gold to the Italian embassy. Eventually, the Italian government would petition the Allied nations for the retrieval of their gold. It probably wouldn't all make it back to Italy, but it might be used effectively to repair and rebuild their battered towns. If that happened, Lieutenant Yamamoto and his friends would only be able to sneak out a few ingots at most. He was greedily planning to make this his own treasure island, so that he and his subordinates could have an enormous fortune all to themselves. If he wanted to succeed, the Italians would have to keep the presence of the gold quiet. But there's one thing I don't get. If Lieutenant Angelo doesn't want to let anyone have the gold, he could have just let the submarine sink. Why did he have it unloaded? I'd rather not think about it. Because he also wants to keep it for himself. Fuck. But Lieutenant Angelo might have started planning to embezzle the gold as soon as he realized that their mission would be impossible to complete. Right now he's asking his subordinates for their opinions, both as soldiers and as individuals, with families waiting for them back home. The more straight-laced soldiers are furious. The discussion between the Italians was becoming fierce and emotional. Though their homeland had fallen, they had come all this way in accordance with its orders. They had probably been given this mission because they were particularly faithful and duty-minded troops. It seemed they couldn't just agree to a foreigner's proposal to embezzle and split up the gold. Lieutenant Angelo looked like he was doing all he could to calm the unexpectedly fervent rage of his subordinates. Looks like the gold is blinding them, too. Everyone's mixing up their true feelings with how they want to be seen, and they can't make up their minds. How's their answer coming, Ushiromiya? Ushiromiya! Bice? Lieutenant Yamamoto's asking for an answer. They're saying they want some time to think. I had you to talk to, so I was able to distract myself from our current situation, but that wasn't true for the rest of them. They lost a lot of comrades at the end of a very long journey, and now they're here and in a tight spot. They've even lost their mission. The one thing they could depend on to guide them. They don't know what to do. Sir, they say they'd like some time. Sure, let them talk it over all they want, but they'd better not take too long. If we're going to hide the gold, that'll take some time and effort. Make your decision before noon tomorrow, that's all, Italians. He's giving you until noon tomorrow. That bastard, he's practically threatening you. Lieutenant Angelo says he'll ask for everyone's thoughts on the matter. Which way do you think they'll go? It'll probably be tough going. It seems Lieutenant Angelo is willing to consider splitting it, but his subordinates and the others will probably oppose that. All of them have lost close friends on their voyage to the Far East. They're firm in their desire to do their duty for their homeland. Will they refuse Lieutenant Yamamoto's proposal? Even if they do, the gold will just fall into someone else's hands. If nothing is going to be left anyway, Lieutenant Angelo suggests that they each sneak at least one ingot back with them, and some of the others seem to agree. But men always get carried away at times like this. Even I can't guess what they'll do. I imagine the Italians had some complicated feelings about all of this. In their eyes, the Italy that surrendered was probably little better than an enemy country. Letting the gold go back there would make their entire voyage meaningless. However, embezzling and divvying up the gold would also make their whole voyage meaningless. The country they felt obligated to serve had already fallen. That alone destroyed the significance of their journey, not a happy story for them, if it's bound to be meaningless anyway. Wouldn't keeping hold of even just a few ingots be better than nothing? Sure, if you want to calculate straight up profit and loss, but men aren't like that. The Italians were gathered in a cramped room, arguing fiercely. I don't like it. We must remain true to our soldier spirit until the end for the sake of our fallen comrades. And how do you define remaining true? By hiding the gold on this island? By accepting the proposal of those Asians? We can't trust them, especially that Yamamoto person. We mustn't let our guards down. Unloading the gold and letting the Japanese see it was a huge mistake. We should have let it sink with the sub. Oh, one avoided. Let's just sink it right inside a Japanese base. It would have been pulled up eventually. That wouldn't hide anything. It doesn't matter. There's no way to get the gold off this island without anyone knowing. If we had just taken the honorable path and scuttled the sub, none of this would have happened. If we had known the sub would be broken beyond repair, why did the lieutenant commander contact the Japanese military and ask for help? How was he planning to carry out our mission if they found out about the gold? Our mission was a failure from the moment he asked them for help. All of us have families waiting for us back home, and we've more than done our part. I'd say voyaging all the way to this island country in the Far East. You might call this fair and just payment for our services. Chatter, chatter. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Lieutenant Angelo, if the Japanese prove to be less than amicable, we need to be prepared to take extreme measures. And what do you mean by extreme measures, Corporal? Someone gulped. A stiff tension hung over the room. The Japanese here are pushovers. They're all cowards with no battle experience, and we're the elite. We know the layout of almost the entire base, along with the number of Japanese troops and how they're arranged. If Lieutenant Angelo gives the order, we should be able to subdue them quickly. Only a few of them, Yamamoto included, look like fighters. The rest are just laborers attached to the military. It may look like they have the advantage of numbers, but we have the greater military force. If we kill the Japanese, what exactly are we going to say when the boat comes to pick us up? You really think that'll work? There should be plenty of ways to work it, as long as the corpses aren't found. Lieutenant Angelo, it'll be easy to subdue this base. If we kill Yamamoto and the few strong fighters, the laborers will probably surrender easily. Let's have them carry the gold and bury it. Of course, we'll have to silence them afterwards. Are you suggesting we massacre all of them? Let's do it. If we kill them all, no one will know about the gold. At that moment, the supposedly locked door opened slightly, and a metal object was thrown in. Granata! As the yell rang out, the table was kicked over to be used as a shield, and they all dropped to the floor. However, in this cramped room, it probably wouldn't do them any good. The Italians were all prepared for death. Question mark? A dud. It's a dud. Fortunately, the shoddy grenade was a dud. The door was slammed open and 3 Japanese soldiers wielding pistols jumped in. Damn it, it's a dud. Kill the Italians. Kill the Italians. Return fire. Fire at will. In this small room, no matter who shot where, it was bound to hit someone. The exchange of bullets instantly caused a rain of blood, with casualties on both sides. The three who jumped in were covered with bullet holes and fell over, moaning and thrashing. Grab, cough, cough. Gino, damn, they got his lung. He's lung shot. Anyone ever watch that Cyanide Happiness episode? We can't save him. We should consider ourselves lucky. If that grenade had gone off, we'd all be dead. The grenade was still rolling about on the floor, and then it exploded. It had been a surprise attack. Lieutenant Yamamoto had probably judged the negotiations wouldn't go his way, and had decided to make the first move. Or maybe he'd been planning from the beginning to put them in a position where they'd be gathered in one place to discuss his offer. Rokkenjima was their island. If they killed all the Italians, then not half, but all the gold would go to the Japanese. There was a chance the grenade might go off late. The Italians rushed out into the corridor. Explosion noises. They heard gunfire from down the hall. It was coming from the direction of the submarine dock. Clearly the troops guarding the pile of gold were being attacked. Lieutenant Angelo, what are your orders? We have no choice. Kill the Japanese. Lieutenant, these guys are good. Those Italians aren't your ordinary sailors. I see. They needed men good enough to guard that gold, after all. We have the numbers. Keep your cool. Surround them and kill them. Let's hunt some Italians. I'm glad I don't have epilepsy. This still hurts my eyes, though. Ow! As soon as I heard the sound of repeated gunfire, I knew that something which had been smoldering since the time the gold was unloaded had finally burst. The eyes of our soldiers looking at that gold hadn't been normal. Yet, they have like the gold sickness, like, Lord of the Rings? The Hobbit? Yes, those eyes had been entranced by demons. The Italians had been pushed to the limits by the heavy burden they bore. Who wouldn't have snapped after being trapped in a distant land where you can't understand the language or the writing? Thinking I had to do something, I ran towards the sound of gunfire. Looking back on it, that was an extremely stupid thing to do. That sound meant that there were people shooting at each other, people killing each other, yet unarmed as I was, I dashed toward the sound as though I was trying to mediate some schoolyard fight. It didn't take long before I learned how foolish and naive that was in the heat of battle. Hiroka? Warrant Officer Hiroka was lying face down, his entire body drenched in blood. Judging by the trail of blood behind him, it was clear that he had somehow managed to crawl here from a different room before dying. No, he was still twitching. He might not be dead yet, but on this island without a doctor, no, even if we had a doctor, who could possibly save a man who had been shot this many times in the chest? When I looked into the room he must have crawled out of, I saw two more blood-stained Japanese corpses. They're dead. I fell backwards pathetically on my butt, my mouth hanging open in shock. Come to think of it, that was the first time I had ever faced death in my life. The entire world was at war. Even though millions were dying both east and west, this was the first time I'd met with a person's death directly. Ridiculous. Didn't I join the army hoping to die? Didn't I whine about not being sent to the front lines? Yeah, so rejoice, Kenzo. Isn't this the death you were looking for? Why not spread your hands and yell out loud, "Come for me, magnificent death." Is that an Evangelion reference? Komsur Todd? Someone came running towards me. It was a colleague of mine, a Japanese man, Tajimo-kun. He dashed towards me, pale-faced and out of breath. His face seemed horribly contorted with fear. Mine probably looked the same. Tajimo-kun, what happened? Run away! We'll all be killed! Someone yelled in Italian. At the same time, Tajima-kun let out a scream. Then he grabbed onto me as he fell onto the floor. A red stain was spreading across his back before my eyes. Tajima-kun, run, cough, cough. As he spat up bubbles of blood, he said that one word and died. But the shock of seeing someone die right in front of me did not freeze my heart. At a fundamental level, all living things are unconcerned with the deaths of others. The one thing that matters is whether they themselves die or not. It was the barrel of the gun the Italian soldier was pointing that froze my heart. Tajima-kun's back burst once more as he leaned against me. Flesh tore, blood splattered. The warm splash of it covered my face. Was the Italian still trying to finish him off, even though he had stopped moving for good? How foolish I have been. Can I still not understand the scene in front of me? Rejoice, Kenzo. Now you'll finally get what you've wanted. All this time, the Italian hadn't fired to finish off Tajima-kun. He had been aiming at the man Tajima-kun had fallen on. Me, Ushiromiya Kenzo. Wah! I pushed his corpse aside, scrabbled against the floor, and dashed away, tumbling over myself. My hands had pushed off against the floor hard enough to tear off the ring fingernail on my left hand. When faced with death, humans truly can resist with all they've got. I tumbled over and over as I ran, scraping up parts of my body. It was painful, hot, but that didn't matter at all. I heard that yelling in Italian come from behind me over and over again. It felt like they were running, chasing after me. I didn't want to look back, so I kept on running and running as though the Italians were right behind me. This is death. Didn't you want to die? No, I don't want to die. Why? Didn't I want to die so badly? But now I know. I know how wonderful it is to be alive. She taught me. Bice did. I can only be free when I talk with her. No. By talking with her, I finally came alive for the first time. I was born. I want to live. I want to live. I want to live. I want to live. I don't want to die. I want to live and see her right now. If I don't see her, I'll die. I'll be killed. Stay cool, Kenzo. She might be killed too. If you live and she dies, you might as well be dead. Before I knew it, my face was covered in tears, snot, and saliva. When I stumbled into something and fell, I was finally able to come to my senses a little. I could still hear the intermittent gunfire. The gunfight was still going on, and it had spread throughout the entire base. Bice, are you okay? I'll find her and take her to a safe place. The lieutenant will probably kill all of the Italians to steal the gold. Bice probably won't be an exception. Bice! Bice! I lived for the first time after meeting you. I was born, so if you die, I'll die again. I could feel every cell in my body being reborn, not as Ushiromiya Kenzo, but as a completely different Kenzo. Of course, I was terrified that I might really be shot if I went back, but I didn't want to die anymore, to truly die, so I was able to overcome my fear. Bice! Rubens! What on earth is going on? What is all this? There's no need for you to know. Just stay hidden there. Don't come out until one of your fellow countrymen calls for you. I heard an Italian voice. He's over there. Damn yellow monkeys. Rubens stood with Beatrice behind his back and neatly shot the two men rushing at him with 2 9mm bullets. 2 9mm bullets from his Beretta M1934. However, one of the 8mm bullets from their Type 94 semi-auto pistols went straight into Rubens' chest. All three of the shooters were struck in the chest and fell down in a heap. No! Rubens! Go up to the surface. You have to hide in the forest. Cough, cough. Rubens. my. Aren't we chatty? The next person to appear was the commanding officer of the Japanese soldiers, Yamamoto. The blast of the 3 guns had just sounded. Adding on Beatrice's screams, it was hardly surprising that he had noticed the encounter. If it had come to this anyway, we should have just taken this woman as a hostage in the first place. Damn annoying, that's what they are. Yamamoto spat. Beatrice used that moment to snatch up Rubens' gun. Kya! Well, look at you, reaching to pick up a gun without missing a beat. Italian women sure are scary. Damn it, both of you screwed up. He spat this last part at the 2 dying men who lay moaning at his feet. However, what happened next... happened to them wasn't particularly surprising. It wasn't the first time it had happened either. In this tiny, cramped tunnel, nearly everyone had met head-on. When both sides shot recklessly in such a situation, the result was 2 corpses. So whoever sensed another person and pulled the trigger quickest won. That was the only way to survive this battle without a bullet in your chest. Because of this, both Japanese and Italians had killed each other without hesitation. They sometimes even pulled the trigger on oncoming allies. In the midst of all this were several Japanese men who had stumbled into the fight and wondering what was going on. It didn't matter whether the other person was holding a gun or not. Everyone had reflexively pulled the trigger at the sight of anyone other than themselves trying to stay alive. The entire base had been wrapped up in this slaughter. There was a fierce gun battle taking place on the submarine dock, and a massacre resembling a hunt was taking place inside the base. Most of the non-combatants assigned to this base were killed before they knew what was going on. The Italians were indeed quite seasoned troops, but their numbers began to drop bit by bit. Blood-stained corpses were scattered everywhere. At first, it had probably been a proper gunfight. However, as their minds began to grow weary and numb, I still have to say that Ushiro Miyakairi is extremely pretty, and I like her personality. Beyond that, she looks like Ivy from Soul Calibur 2, the fighting game. You know, she has like a sword whip thing, but yeah, Ivy. She also looks like Kaoru Nagisa from Evangelion, and like Sare, the VTuber. So, but yeah, Ivy from Soul Calibur 2, the fighting game. It was on the PS2. However, at first it had probably been a proper gunfight. However, as their minds began to grow weary and numb, it devolved into that most basic cause of wars throughout humanity, the desire to kill all foreigners you don't understand. Whenever they heard words they didn't understand, they pulled the trigger. By that point, the screams of foreigners sounded no different than those of man-shaped beasts. After all, they couldn't understand pleading in another language, so it had long ago turned to a mere massacre. As the number of dead surpassed the number of living, silence began to return to the base. Just when it felt as though everyone had died, and you could hear the desolate sound of the wind blowing through the caves, there would be a sudden scream, the crisp sound of a gun, and you'd remember that the massacre wasn't yet over. This happened over and over again, and eventually true silence fell. It marked the pitiful end for those led astray by gold. The leader of the Italian soldiers, Angelo, had managed to survive somehow. He encountered nothing but the corpses of friend and foe. All was quiet once more in the base. If he was careless enough to call out, he might be shot from the shadows somewhere. So he snuck about like a panther, breathing quietly and searching for remaining enemies. There was no sign or trace of any living person. Maybe all of the people in this base had died. Damn Japanese. The Japanese struck first, but at that time we were also talking about killing them. They simply made the first move as military men, so perhaps we should be grateful for this day. Even if the boat had come to pick us up, there would have been no honor left for us. We would have been mere failures in our mission, unfit to face our dead comrades. Perhaps dying here in the Far East alongside my gun is a more fitting end for a soldier. I noticed the sound of shuffling feet coming from around the corner and strained to hear. Is someone seriously wounded and dragging their feet? Noticing them before they notice me greatly helps my chances. At this stage, there's no point in taking prisoners. We must dispose of all of the Japanese. I'll dash around the corner quickly and check to see who they are, and shoot if it's a Japanese person, nothing more. I've been hiding my footsteps the whole time. They probably don't know I'm here. Once the shuffling footsteps had come close enough, Angelo leaned around the corner and raised his gun. The voice that reached him spoke Italian. Run! Question mark? You? I've been looking for you, Lieutenant Angelo. That makes all of you. I've been counting Italian corpses, you see. Lieutenant Angelo, are you okay? Blood poured from Angelo's chest. He's not okay. His gun fell to the floor, then his knees, and then the rest of his body crumpled and stopped moving. Yamamoto's accuracy with a gun wasn't particularly stellar. However, Angelo had waited until they were fairly close before jumping out, so Yamamoto had made the shot. He had managed to hit even with a short-barreled handgun in one hand and a woman as a hostage in the other. Really, though, Aorakanjima Garrison was pathetic. Am I the only one who's not dead? Trash. All of them. Can't you fight without using a woman as a shield? You brute. Let's go. Quiet. Noisy, these Italian girls. If you'd just be cooperative, I'd at least spare your life. It was such an obvious lie that even he wore a bitter smile. The Italians were spies working for the enemy, and they all died along with the garrison in a gunfight. Since this was the story Yamamoto wanted to tell, he couldn't afford to have any Italian survivors. By this point, he wouldn't be able to keep the entire pile of gold. But he should be able to grab as many as he could carry. Even that would be worth a huge amount of money. Beatrice suddenly swung her head, smashing Yamamoto's nose hard. Someone help! Someone! Kya! You bitch! Blah blah blah. She almost managed to escape. However, Yamamoto quickly grabbed her leg and tripped her. She fell onto her back, and Yamamoto mercilessly stomped his foot on her stomach and pointed his gun at her. I don't make a hobby of taming tomboys. Die. Lieutenant Yamamoto, she had nothing to do with this. Let go of her. Kenzo had jumped out from the shadows. He was holding a gun he had stolen from one of the corpses. Ushiromiya? Ah, so you're alive. Let go. You're hurting her. It was you, wasn't it? You tipped the Italians off. What are you talking about? Yamamoto didn't know that the grenade had been a dud. He had been sure that the surprise attack would work, but it hadn't, so he'd assumed that Kenzo must have tipped them off. It's your fault the surprise attack failed, and we're stuck like this. You turncoat, you traitor to your country. I know you've been working with them through this woman. Can't you see that you caused all this because you were blinded by gold? Run, Kenzo! This man has shot people begging for their lives. He'll shoot you too. Don't talk Italian. If you open your mouth again, I won't hesitate to shoot. It hurts. Yamamoto ground his heel into Beatrice's gut. Stop it. Stop it. She has nothing to do with this. Oh-ho? Are you pointing a gun at a superior officer? Stop and think a bit, fool. If we agree to keep to the same story, we can have that pile of gold all to ourselves, okay? I could only grab a few on my own, but if we work together, we will be able to sneak off with even more. I don't mean this as your superior officer. Let's split it equally between us as men. The last time you offered to split the gold 50-50, you tried to slit their throats. Tish, Ushiromiya, looks like you prefer lead to gold. Without any hesitation, Yamamoto raised the barrel of his gun towards Kinzo and pulled the trigger. It grazed Kinzo's right ear. If Yamamoto's aim had been just a bit better, the bullet would have slammed into Kinzo's face. Kinzo? How could you? Not letting Yamamoto's momentary distraction go to waste, Beatrice lashed out and planted her right foot in Yamamoto's crotch. After moaning in pain, a demonic expression flashed across Yamamoto's face, and he stomped on her chest. Bice! You bitch! Die! Beatrice shut her eyes tightly, hoping that she could withstand the coming pain. No one wants to watch the moment they get shot. You drip, drip, drip. A blood splash poured out of Yamamoto's chest. Just as you took so many lives for your own personal reasons, I'll take your life for mine. Could Yamamoto hear Kinzo's words until the end? In his last moments, he seemed to grin. Then slowly he fell backwards with a spurt of blood. Kinzo! Are you okay? I was sure you'd been shot. Noises. Beatrice tried to stand up, but then doubled over and started coughing. Did you get ribs broken? Bice, are you hurt? My ribs are hurting. Well, that's awful. That brute really was stomping them hard. Will you be okay? I hope they aren't broken. Italian women don't break so easily. But, thanks. I owe you my life. If you hadn't come, it would all have ended there. Yamamoto had shown no mercy. Her ribs were probably cracked. We didn't have the option of waiting possibly for several days for the ship that was coming. I made the decision to carry her away from the island. The man who kept yelling about preserving the secrecy of the base is lying there dead. The next island over, Nijima, is close. A small boat should be more than enough to get us there. I need to take you to a hospital. The wound might be more serious than you realize. That's interesting. I never knew there was a hospital on this island. There isn't. A boat should get us to the next island over. We'll get you to a hospital. As for me, unless I cleverly cover up what happened on this island, I might end up getting court-martialed for just for being here. I have a request. Please don't take me to a hospital. Why? If we go to a hospital, then the embassy is contacted. I'll eventually be sent back to Italy. If that happens, I'll be interrogated about all kinds of things. I won't acknowledge the bastards who let Mama die. Okay, are we ever going to discuss this? There's no homeland for me to return to now. This is the end for me, so there's nowhere I want to go anymore. Lieutenant Angelo, Rubens, everyone who's so kind to me, they're all dead. And because of that, you want to die here too? I thought you said Italian women weren't weak. Live. Hey, Kinzo, what does it mean to live? You're the one who taught me, aren't you? Living is more than just breathing. I don't want to go back to Italy. Bice? You said that you were dead until you met me. But it's the same for me. I died in that submarine. My homeland fell. Mama died. Even Papa died. I prayed that our sub would just sink to the bottom of the ocean. So when we reached this place, I was actually disappointed that we'd survived. Then, right after that, Lieutenant Angelo started asking me whether anyone could speak English. When Kinzo met Beatrice, he finally forgot about dying. And when Beatrice met Kinzo, she also forgot about dying. Now that I've lost my homeland, my family, and my friends, my only wish is for you to kidnap me and take me away with you. Bice?